Coming up on this episode of Region Automotive, we change some dirty ass oil, we find some broken ass exhaust, and we attempt to fix it. We try to do technical things, take photos of our final product, and finally crunch some numbers. My name is Jeremy, this is Region Automotive, and let's get to work. So, this is the car. The story behind this thing is I actually offer a service where I sell cars for people as well, kind of like an agent, or not necessarily consignor, more an agent. Like usually I'll list the car from the person's house, take photos, show it, negotiate, sell it for the person, and then they pay me a commission. So the customer I sold this car for, it was a right-hand drive Subaru I sold for the customer. And instead of, they were mentioning how they had this extra car they wanted to get rid of and it needed a bit of work. I'll show you in a sec here. So they said they're going to let it go for $500. And then I said, instead of my commission, why don't you just give me this car? And they're like, yep, that's actually a great idea. It gets rid of the car and then I don't have to pay you, and it solves two headaches at once. Two headaches at once, two birds with one stone. I don't know the saying. Anyway, this is the car. It is, I believe, a 2006 Pontiac Vibe. It's not in terrible shape. Like, it has a few repairs that's stopping it from being roadworthy. So, for one, obviously the battery, the battery is toast. So I'm trying to save that now with the charger because I was able to boost it, and I'll show you why I think it keeps on dying. So, battery's toast, so I'm charging that now. Windshield's pretty bad. I may replace that, but like in my experience, when you put these cars up, especially these cheap beater cars, like people are just gonna lowball you anyway. So usually I just leave the windshield and let them lowball me and be like, yeah, needs a windshield. I think I'm gonna ask close to $3,000 for this car and hope to get around $2,000. So someone's gonna be like, oh, it needs a windshield, I'll give you $2,200. I'm like, yep, no problem, take it. Versus if I replace the windshield, someone's gonna be like, hey, I like the car, I'll give you $2,200. Like, regardless, I think you're gonna get the same offer. So I usually don't replace the windshields. I don't think I will on this one. A little bit of rust on the top there, not that bad. Honestly, the body's pretty clean on this side. Like, next to no rust on the body. Even like the pinch welds when I was lifting it up on the hoist there, those are pretty sturdy. So the body's actually not bad. Interior is pretty dirty. It's been neglected for sure. They'll need a bit of work. Steering wheel's off center. I'll show you my little trick for that. Yeah, it's been used as a work car, so I'll need a good detail. And then here in the back, I think this is why the battery keeps on dying. So the latch isn't working properly on the rear hatch. Like the door open light stays on the dash. So I think this latch is not working properly. So I'm going to take that apart, see if I can clean it to fix it. And then we'll go to this side. This is the major body issue with the car. Like some paint peeling rust there, and then some kind of just weird dents, and it's missing the fender trim. Again, will I get a new trim and fix that? Maybe if I could find one easily, but I probably won't be able to for this car, so I'll probably leave it. Like, again, people are going to lowball you. It's a beater car. It runs and drives. I'll show you in a sec here. It starts actually pretty good. That's pretty much the walk around of the car. We'll get it lifted up, and I'll show you the two main issues with the undercarriage. So one of the main issues with the car is it's puking fluid out of the side of the transmission. Apparently the clutch was changed on this thing, and the person who didn't do the best job. That's part of the reason why I got this thing for quote unquote free, is because the previous owner was worried about the clutch job and it wasn't done right. And I mean, that's fair because it's just puking oil out of the transmission. So what I think it was, the axle was in there. Like, there's a pretty big gap between the axle and the transmission. And I noticed actually when I took the axle nut off here, it hasn't, like, I just took it off obviously, but before it was very obvious to me that it wasn't taken off. So I think when they did the transmission, they just loosened it and like just popped the axles out and just kind of had them hanging. And then when they put it in, I think they just slid it in, but there's usually a little C-clip at the end of the axle that you actually have to like seat in the transmission. So what I did is I took that nut off I just showed you, and then I put a center punch in the center of the axle here, and I just bashed it a few times, and that actually sucked the axle into the transmission. Like before, there's a way bigger gap there, and the axle is very loose. So fingers crossed. I don't want to get my hopes up, but I think that fixed it. Just seating the axle like in that seal in the transmission. But the only way to tell is like I'm gonna clean all this fluid off and then let it sit, or maybe I might let it run and just let the wheels idle or something, and see if any fluid's leaking out. And then while we're under here, another issue I have to fix is the exhaust separated right there, so it's super loud. So I just measured the OD of this pipe was 2 1/8 of an inch. OD of this pipe was 2 inch. So it looks like someone has tried to weld a sleeve on there. So I'm just gonna get a similar sleeve and just patch that up. So I have the car on the lift here running. I just wanted to confirm to see if it's leaking. I think it's fixed. Like there's still, I don't know how much you can see there. Yeah, you can see that little bit of fluid around that dust cover, but I couldn't fully get the rag in there, so that could just be fluid like coming out, like just leftover residual fluid. It doesn't seem to be an active leak considering how much was all over the bottom of the car, so fingers crossed. But again, I can't get my hopes up until I like leave it overnight, and I'll clean the floor and then see if there's a puddle when I come back in the morning. But for now, I think that's fixed, fingers crossed. So I'm going to also change the oil while I'm under here. The filter's leaking, looks rusty at the top there. Looks like that hasn't been touched in a while. Maybe it has, and just kind of judging by the condition of the rest of the car, I'm guessing it hasn't been done in a while, so I'm just going to give it a fresh oil change. Let's see if I can get this without getting oil everywhere while holding the camera. Almost. Oh yeah, easy. Yeah, that oil looks pretty gross. Good thing we're changing it. Now that we have the oil changed, I showed you earlier in the video that this latch wasn't latching properly, and I think that's why the battery kept on dying, is maybe it left the interior light on, or just the dash light, the door light was on, I think. So regardless, it's not latching properly. So I'm going to take this plastic panel off and those 310s, and let's take that latch out completely, and I bet you we can take it apart and clean it. It's probably just jamming up, and it should function properly. So let's go ahead and do that. So I got the latch out and apart here. All I did was spray it with some WD-40 first and kind of dried everything up. And then I sprayed it with some penetrating oil. And it seems to be much smoother now. I think it's going to work, but obviously we can't tell till we get it in. So here, if I pull, that releases the latch there. And then I push it down. So I think what was happening, it was doing that first latch, but it wasn't doing that second click, I think, is what we needed to lock it in there. So let's put it back in and see if that fixed it. All right, let's see if that cleaned up latch did anything. My guess is not. It actually did. I'll tell you the story why I said my guess is not. So I did it, and originally it did not fix anything because the striker plate was loose. But I actually took the screw out and just kind of put it in place before even tightening the screw. I wanted to show you guys, and I guess that was enough. Like just putting it in place, I tightened it just enough by hand to hold the door. But anyway, that's the problem. It wasn't the sticking latch. It was the striker plate that was loose. So I'm just going to tighten that up. Next up on the list, I'm going to take, obviously our exhaust pipe is completely rusted through there. It looks like actually someone already repaired it, so that's interesting. It actually may have looked like it rusted at the weld. So anyway, I'm going to take this muffler off this section of the exhaust so I can cut and prep a nice square edge on that. And same thing, I'm gonna take this whole resonator out. It bolts up just at the down pipe down there. So I can cut that off, clean that up. And then I've bought 3 different size exhaust pipes. So I'll find the one that fits the best. Then I think I'm going to weld on the workbench. I'm gonna weld that in place. And then I'm gonna cut it as long as I need. I'll probably measure it while it's in place here. Can you guys see behind that axle carrier or beam or whatever you want to call it there? That's probably a little better. So yeah, I'm gonna cut and weld that on the workbench, and then I'll measure probably up until that point. I'll cut that nice and square, and then I'm gonna weld. I'll probably just go around and spot weld in place. Let's get our 2 exhaust pipes off here and start prepping and see if it can turn out as good as I think it can. So I got the muffler part off here, just kind of supported in the vise, and then I'm gonna clean up, like I said, clean up and square up. Looks like old rusted weld and stuff, so I'm just gonna clean that right up and get a good surface to weld on. I'm happy with that prep. I'll be able to get a pipe pretty square and sealed on there. But before I select which of my 3 pipes I'm gonna use, I'm gonna remove this section of the exhaust, and I'm gonna clean and prep it again. Just because, yeah, like I don't know if I'm gonna slip over that butt at that end, slip over butt at the other end or whatever. So like I said, before I select my 3 pipes, I want to do this smartly and take this off as well. And I'm going to clean and prep that, and then I'll select my pipe. So I have both pipes cleaned up here, and we have ourselves a plan. So I'm going to use this no, not this one. This 2-inch ID pipe. 2-inch ID pipe. I'm going to weld it, but like flat onto this end here. And then I'm gonna cut it. So it's gonna go, this OD is gonna go up into this exhaust. So I don't create like a turbulent zone, I guess, or inefficiency. So like the exhaust stream is gonna go through this pipe, and it's gonna open up to that bigger diameter and go out the muffler. So yeah, I'm gonna weld it to that. Put this in the car. I'm gonna double check my length. Actually, now I think about that, that's fine. I guess it's not that big of a deal. Take that out. So anyway, I pretty much want to weld that, double check my length, and then cut this. I'll have like 2 inches or 3 inches of tube going into that part, and I'll do some tacks, and I think that muffler cement will seal it up real nice. So let's get started. I'm going to cut this guy down. I'm going to leave myself extra length, and then I'm going to weld it to that, and then we'll put it in the car and see how it's looking. Okay, so one more change of plans here on the old welding job. So I cut the narrow side on the pipe there, and then I welded it like that. The reason why I did that is because those 2 pipes, those 2 pipes should join nicely. And then I'm gonna weld this on like that. And the idea is they slip into each other once I straighten that out and get it to fit. Yeah, comment on my weld job below. Definitely not too bad for backyard mechanic. Not great. I already know my wife is going to roast me in the comments. Anyway, I'm going to get that straightened out. This in the car, and then that in the car, and then we'll see how bad my angle is there. You know, that angle is actually not as bad as I expected. I thought it was going to be way off, but that's actually not too bad. I am happy with that and can make that work. So pretty much what I'm going to do, holding that up one hand, so I want to weld that onto the muffler here, and then I'm going to cut this pipe pretty much like the length, maybe half. Yeah, probably 3/4 of the length of that bigger part that receives it. So I'm going to measure from down, like from that groove down, say 1.5 inches or something, cut that, and then I'll slide it in, tack it up in place. Probably, I'll see if I can weld it in place. I gotta be careful because of the gas tank. I may take it down. But anyway, I think this is gonna come together, so it's good. And then an update on our axle job here that I thought I got away with easy and free. It's still leaking. So I'm gonna have to get a new seal for sure. And then once I have the axle out, I'll check the sealing surface on the axle. If that's damaged, then I'll have to get a new axle as well. That is about as good as that's gonna get. I'm not, honestly not too upset with that. The way that meets up. It didn't quite go as planned. I wanted this smaller into the larger diameter. So like, for example, when the exhaust is blowing up, you're going to get a little bit of blow by there. But I'm going to get a clamp. I'll pick up a clamp tomorrow. So I'll clamp that all together. So that should take care of that. And it's kind of nice, actually. So then you have the clamp there. Instead of welding that, like you have a serviceable joint if you want to remove the muffler. Muffler's all in. Exhaust is in. Made that angle. Actually not half bad. So let's lower it and see how much quieter the car is now. First start here with the new exhaust. Let's see how it sounds. Oh, it's much quieter. Before, oh yeah, you can barely hear that. Just rev the crap out of it while it's cold. Yeah, before that was like straight pipe, like no muffler, like that's so much quieter. I am happy with that. So, like I said earlier, car's been sitting for a couple days and there's fluid everywhere, so just reseating that axle did not fix our issue. That must have got damaged. The seal must have got damaged when they put the axles back in when they did the clutch. So I went straight to Toyota, got myself the seal, factory seal, and now I'm just working on getting the axle off so I can get a good look at that seal. So I just took my axle nut off here, and then apparently, luckily this ball joint's actually pretty easy to separate, just these 3 nuts here. And then I'll swing the steering knuckle out of the way so I can get this part of the axle out, and then I'll just pop it out from the transmission there and take a look at what's going on with the seal. Got the axle out here, and the sealing surface actually looks pretty good, so I don't think I need to replace the axle. I have the new seal in there. Clean it up as much as I could. I don't see a bit of a drop forming at the bottom, but there's like a bunch of oil like inside of that dust cover there, so really only time will tell. I have everything somewhat put back together. I'm gonna clean this all up and then put a piece of cardboard or pad or something while I detail it. I expect that to take me a couple hours, and hopefully after a couple hours there's no spots on the ground, and then I'll call that fixed. Oh, detailing the inside is done. That took closer to 3.5 hours instead of 2 hours. I think this is the dirtiest car I've flipped on this channel, but it's worth the time because it's obviously much cleaner now. And if you remember one of my previous videos, I talked about tips for flipping cars, and one of them was to never underestimate cleaning and detailing. So that's good, that's done. And then we also have good news on the seal. It looks like it's sealed properly. I put that piece of cardboard there right when I started detailing, so it's been 3.5 hours. There's not a single drip on it, which is good. And then if I look at the seal itself, there's, like, you see a little bit of moisture, but again, that's like the extra fluid that is behind the dust seal there. And then I sprayed a crap ton of brake clean in there, so it kind of diluted it. And then like when I wiped it down, but there's like no new drips or anything forming. So I'm pretty confident that that's fixed. So with that being said, our last step is to straighten the steering wheel, and then almost tripped there. Straighten the steering wheel, and then we'll take it for a wash and take our photos. Okay, so the problem with the steering wheel is I believe one of the steering components was replaced, and they tried to get the wheel straight by doing it in a wheel alignment, but no matter how they adjusted it, they couldn't get the wheel straight while the car drives straight. So the wheels are straight right now, and then the steering wheel is off center, if you see. So what I'm gonna do is disconnect the battery, pop the airbag out, take that big nut that holds the wheel on, and then just rotate it a few splines until the wheel's straight. The steering wheel is straight with the wheels. So I got the airbag off. It's normally just held on with 2 screws, T30 screws. Again, made sure my battery is disconnected so I don't ignite that or whatever, set that off while I'm disconnecting it. And yeah, this is a 19 mil bolt, so I'm just gonna loosen it and then clock the wheel. Then I'll probably take it for a drive and just make sure the wheel is perfectly straight before I put everything back together. As I'm driving here, it's actually clocked way off, so I'm gonna have to stop and reclock it to, it may have been actually pretty close to how I had it, but anyway, I'm going to stop and reclock it. And I'm going to keep on doing that until it's straight. After a couple fine adjustments, she's tracking nice and straight now, so that's good. I guess it always tracks straight. The steering wheel is straight while the car drives straight, so that's great. So next up, we are going to wash the car and then take photos and list it. All right, guys, she's all washed up. I figured I'd do a quick walk around before I insert my photos. I must say, although this is like an old beater car, to me it's still really satisfying, maybe even more satisfying, considering how rough of shape this thing was when I started, with the leak and exhaust and the door not working and how dirty it was. But I got her pretty dialed in. Outside's nice and clean. It's running good, no issues. Exhaust is quiet. Yeah, that's super clean. Yeah, like I said, running good, no issues. Yeah, and then there's that damage on the passenger side. I'm gonna check Amazon, see if I can get, because I think it just needs that trim piece. I'm gonna check Amazon, see if I can get that easily. If not, I will disclose it. Yeah, so I'll insert my photos and then we'll catch up with you guys once it sells. All right, guys, the Vibe has sold. So let's talk about my costs, how much I sold it for, my hours, and then we'll do that final hourly rate. So my cost really wasn't that much into this one. I had that oil change, exhaust pipe, detailing supplies, and the axle seal. I estimated my cost for that to be about $100. And then I ended up selling it for $27.50. So obviously take the $27.50 minus my $100 cost. So that was a total profit of $26.50. So that's pretty good, obviously, because the vehicle is free. So that's pure profit. But let's talk about the time and see how we did on our hourly rate. The axle seal, that took me about 2 hours. The exhaust, to mess around, taking out both sections there, cutting, welding, all that stuff, I guessed about 4 hours for that. Oil change, that was quick, half an hour. Detailing, this one was quite dirty, so that took me about 4 hours. And miscellaneous things like fixing the rear door latch there, realigning the steering wheel, miscellaneous things like messing around with the battery, whatever, I guessed that to be about 2 hours. And then selling really wasn't that much. I washed it up, took photos, and ended up selling it to the first person I showed it to, so that was 1 hour. So my total time was 13.5 hours. And if you take my profit of $26.50, divide it by 13.5, that works out to $196 an hour. So that's still pretty good on that one. Thanks for watching, you guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and have a good day.